Okay, I think we are now live. And Chelsea, can you let me know? Does the sound come through okay? Is the microphone picking up the volume okay? Can you hear me? So as we work on the sound checks, as I try to get the volume to work right, I will be messing with this here. Let's see if I can turn this guy up a little bit. Sound check, sound check. Can you hear me coming through? Can you hear me? Okay, is it loud or should I uh, be a little bit more or is it a good volume coming through? Okay, it's pretty quiet. Okay. Okay, the mic for whatever reason isn't picking up very loud. Let me see if I can turn up the settings on it. Okay, I'm not really sure 100%. I think it might have be picking up my other mic, so bear with me as I disconnect my mic and see if I can hook the other mic back. How about now? Is it working now? The mic number one still coming in pretty low frequency. How about now? Okay, morning, Bob. Morning, Dr. Brenneman. Okay, I think that it looks like my receiver on my mic is starting to pick it up a little bit now. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. I appreciate everyone's patience. I'll keep my messenger open, and in case people, Chelsea, you have anything to tell me to speak up or whatever I'm supposed to do, because the purpose for this is for mainly I think states that like our Washington state, because as we go into the winter time, there's so much information going out with RSV and influenza and COVID and measles now, and there's a lot of personal kind of almost attacks that are coming through via social media, and it's nothing new that we haven't seen before. But I just wanted to equip you guys with some tools, because this talk isn't really about anti-vaxxers. It's not about anti-medicine people. It is simply for people that have already made up their mind. They already know where they sit and they know what they believe in. And it seems like when I look across the population, everyone's kind of there. No one's on the fence anymore. There are people that are either feel good about putting poisons into their kids and on their kids, or there's people that don't. And what I discovered is not because I'm an expert. In fact, I'm quite the opposite, because I am simply a dummy that did not watch the news during the pandemic. So everything I talk about here is not based on an expert point of view. It's not based on any kind of research. So if you're looking for, articles that are like, oh, this is good or this is bad, and this is why you should do whatever you want to do, you're not going to find that here. You're simply going to find techniques to be able to do what you want to do and have peace in it. Because I did not watch the news during the pandemic. And so therefore, I did not realize the programming that was going into the people around me. I just decided I'm going to keep myself healthy, and I'm going to keep my patients healthy, and I'm going to keep my family healthy. And I don't really get what the big deal is if there's this virus that doesn't affect the healthy people. Let's just all be healthy. And so I didn't watch the news. So I'm just a dummy that wasn't informed like the rest of the population. And there may be some truth to the ignorance is bliss. And so when I made decisions based on that premise. I'm like, I'm definitely not putting a piece of fabric over my face to stop an aerosolized virus. And why would anyone do this? And and then through that process, I had significant consequences. So I was investigated by the Department of Health. I was investigated by the Department of Labor Industry, and then I had to get really serious really quickly because the things that they were saying are the same things that are saying in the vaccine conversation now, which is you're going to kill people. You are going to be the murderer of grandmas. You are going to spread this thing. You are the reason why we're going to have all our problems. They were telling me this. And they said is defend yourself. And I did. I defended myself. I submitted information that was up to 180,000 patient visit interactions and not a single transmission of COVID within my office. I submitted thousands of pages of documentation to show that not only was there no transmission of COVID within our office, but actually our patients were the healthiest. We didn't have any hospitalizations, any deaths of COVID. We had no chronic illness, and so I defended myself through this whole process, and it was quite stressful. And at the end of the day, I was deemed to be fully compliant, and they said, "Congratulations, Dr. Brossard. You are good to go. Thank you for cooperating. Thank you for setting such a high standard in healthcare and being fully compliant." And again, showing them how to be healthy without masks and vaccines through the pandemic. And then I was asked if I would interview to be on the Department of Health. And then with that, I was honored and I was super excited to help because I always just kind of saw the people that were in charge. They just weren't given the right tools. They weren't given the right information. So I gladly interviewed. I was chosen as the number one pick for the position within the Department of Health for helping and serving the chiropractic profession. And then they said, congratulations, you have been selected. It's not official because the governor has to appoint you. And then the governor does his due diligence on you, and then but he always appoints who would recommend, so you're good. And it was about that time that data started coming back in that showed that regardless of what we were taught, I don't know about you, but I was taught growing up that vaccines stopped you from getting a virus and transmitting it. That's why it was so important that we all had to do it, because it was our job, not just to protect our family, but protect everyone else's family. But then what did we learn during the COVID pandemic? The vaccines actually didn't do that. And so this whole conversation started to shift, and the governor then did not appoint me. In fact, I was then selected for numerous investigations by multiple government agencies, again, for my whole entire team, and then put under the scrutiny of the full hammer of the law. And so after thousands of documentation requests satisfied, pages and pages of information, after unarguable data to show how to stay healthy without this tool that they were forcefully saying that was needed, at the end of the day, it didn't actually matter. Because, and this is the takeaway that I want this long introduction to empower you with, is right now, if you are someone who does not want to inject your kids with poison, doesn't matter what you say, what you do, or what evidence you have, you will not be right. Because vaccines are no longer a science. It is a belief system. It is a religion. It is a cult. And so rather than fighting them, which is what I did, which brought me to very much to my downfall, because day after day, having these intense conversations, defending myself. And if they would have said to me in the very beginning, it doesn't matter what you say or do, you are going to be guilty. Even if at the end of the day, the statement is you will be guilty because we said you were, I would have had a little bit of a different response. And this is what I want to give you because you are in control of yourself, you are in control of your family. And if you kind of think about this situation, if we can restructure it in our mind, in essence, what I was through this whole process was the smartest kid in a Down syndrome class. And I don't say this to insult Down syndrome people. I said it to start to train your mind to be different. Because if you are in this class with mentally, physically disabled people and they're all arguing with you, how do you approach that conversation? Do you bring scientific literature to them? Do you bring the facts and show these group of highly disabled people that you are right and they are wrong? No, you don't. Here's what you do. You say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I got you upset. Let me give you a hug. And then everyone's good again. And that is the whole point of neurologically reframing this conversation. That we are, if you're choosing right now, this is where the bar is set for humanity. If you are choosing to be a person that does not poison your kids, you are simply the smartest kid in the Down syndrome class. Yeah, you're the smartest, but you're still in the class. Because as of this point, if we look at the culture of vaccinations and we just ask ourselves, what defines a cult? So a cult is an absolute, unquestionable authority. There is no questioning it. It's absolute. Its members are coerced with fear, shame, and that's used to prevent them from leaving. And they demand isolation. It's always us versus them. In fact, even the term anti-vax or anti-masker, the people that I think about the before the pandemic, I was not an anti-masker. I was not an anti-vaxxer. I was simply someone that didn't wear a mask and didn't inject myself with chemicals or inject my family with chemicals. But this labeling makes us versus them, right? And then what do we do? Do we own those labels? Yeah, that's right. I'm not part of your team. In essence, we feed into the culture of the cult. And then the secretive and hidden agendas. And so if it looks like a duck, if it sounds like a duck, if it walks like a duck, well, it is. Okay, so now let's just ask yourself a question. I mean, if you find out your friend was joining a cult and it was a cult that required them, in order to be part of the cult, to inject themselves with poison and or inject their family with poison, like, how seriously are you taking these people? Like, how much power are you giving them over you? Because we can change the understanding. If you know a cult that is taking all their members and then having everyone drink Kool-Aid, you would say, I'm not going to go drink that Kool-Aid. And what their words are would be relatively ineffectual, wouldn't they? So this is where the whole smartest kid in the Down syndrome class, because how many of you, and myself included, and I am the smartest kid in this class, because I had a ton of anxiety. I had a ton of stress. I had a ton of personal hurt as people that I knew for years all of a sudden were telling me, God, I'm going to kill these people. I'm going to cause harm. I'm going to kill my family. My kids are going to die. My wife is going to die. Like, how dare me? And yet I let the person be the person attacking me rather than understanding they're simply members of a cult. So cults rule the fake world. They have relationships that are based on fear. And when I say fear, I want to say false experiences appearing real. So let's break down the culture behind vaccinations versus the culture about non-vaccinations, or the vaccine culture, because this goes farther than just injecting chemicals into children for no reason. So the whole idea initially is built on a defense model, isn't it? I got this thing so my kid didn't die. I did this thing so someone's grandma wouldn't die. I do this thing so they don't die. So it's an artificial defense. And in the world of conversation, who doesn't want to stop someone from dying? And then the second point, after it's kind of funny how fast. Have you noticed how fast people forgot that vaccines don't actually stop the transmission of the thing? I mean, we learned it just a couple years ago, and all of a sudden it's back to like, yeah, they definitely do that. So, but I think for the most people that are going to be on this are going to understand that there's not this transmission and protection of getting the thing. Instead, what it is it minimizes the symptoms. So, like, I get the COVID vaccine because I don't get as sick. So it's like it's like a subset. So there's a first argument, which is don't die, don't get it, don't give it to other people, and then it's like, oh, by the way, that doesn't work. So the second one is I don't do it that for that reason. I do it because I don't want to get as sick, and and then the third fake or false experience that's appearing real is, I mean, just in case. I mean, what's the harm? Just do it just in case. And if you look at the natural immunity side of things, it it's kind of the same conversation piece, but a different angle. So natural immunity is accepting the fact that you could die and that your kid could die. And let me ask you a question. Is that okay with you? Now, let me ask another question. Is there any other areas in your life where you also accept this responsibility that you could die? And yet you choose to do the thing you want to do anyways. Like, for example, drive a car. And this is where the vaccine argument is used in the idea of, well, that's why we wear a seatbelt. Did you know that the seatbelt actually has not been shown to decrease deaths? Actually, what the seatbelt is shown to do is it increases false confidence and increases the severity and rate of injuries because people feel like they have this protection. In essence, the seatbelt is the vaccine to driving. It's our thing that we put on just so we don't die. But if someone said it, this seatbelt is now poison that you have to inject in yourself, it would be a different conversation, wouldn't it? You ever get on a plane? If the conversation was, oh, you could die if you get on a plane, so inject yourself with chemicals, it wouldn't make sense. I don't know if anyone would do it. I wouldn't do it. And so then, rather than shying away from this conversation of you could die, like, yeah, you could die any moment and any day. And that's the real world, is that we have actually no control over we live or die. And that's, in essence, where I think it seems like a lot of people that tend to be wanting to walk away from the cult of vaccinations or the vaccine culture is a belief in God, and that God determines if we live or die, and we could die. Number two is that you could feel bad. In fact, this is a conversation that happens often in a chiropractor's office, is that when someone comes in and their body is having a difficult time healing itself because of neurological interference, they then start getting adjusted, and then they feel more sore often when they start getting adjusted. And some people understand that that's the process of healing, and some people feel negative. I didn't want to feel bad. I wanted to feel not bad. And it's the same with exercise. Is if you go to the gym and you work out and you get stronger, you could feel bad. And then this is where the fake world versus the real world is different. So with the artificial defense, I do this thing so I don't die. I do this thing to minimize symptoms. I do this thing just in case I'm exposed. With the natural immunity world, when you get exposed to germs, you feel bad. And that feeling bad is your body getting stronger. And why someone would choose to go through that process is because throughout the rest of your life, you will get exposed to more germs and more difficult things. So you do the natural approach in order to then develop strength just in case something worse comes along. So the just in case is just there. It's just a matter of avoiding it versus being prepared for it. So this is the challenges to leaving a cult from Dr. Janja Lalich and Stephen Hassan, which then asks the questions, why does anyone keep doing the same thing and keep expecting a different outcome? There's 3 areas. There is the phobia of indoctrination, meaning the person cannot survive if they leave the cult. They will die. And the second part is a loss of community. And I get this one big time because here in Washington State, I had one of the largest pediatric chiropractic clinics in the state. And I was highly involved in our community. And I was the president of multiple nonprofit organizations. I was in charge of a runners club that put on fundraiser races that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for nonprofits. I served on the food bank board. I served in Rotary, the local community club. And when the vaccine culture said all our members are wearing a piece of fabric on our face and getting this injection, I chose not to do that. And this is where the masking really revealed people's masks. Because there was no hiding anymore. You were either the person that did it or you weren't. And it was very obvious to everybody. And so immediately I had lost my community that I was a part of, because I was now a person that wasn't part of the group. And that was probably one of the hardest things to go through. And then there's the third part, which is the pragmatic paralysis, weighing the cost of leaving and the cost of staying. And we're going to break down the neurology behind that to give you tools in order to then wire your nervous system to have peace in your decision that you've already made, but you're stuck in this pragmatic paralysis, which is a neurological wiring process within the nervous system that keeps members in this perpetual status. And it's not just with this conversation, it's with all conversations. And that's one of the reasons why people are always waiting for the perfect moment to do something. We're going to break that down, why that is, and then how to rewire your nervous system to correct it. So understanding these challenges really comes down to understanding the nervous system in balance. So on the screen, if you have notes, then you can see there's 4F is greater than R&D. So that's a good one to write down. 4F is greater than R&D. Is the imbalanced nervous system equation as of right now. So the 4F and the R&D are their 2 autonomic nervous system responses. Within the nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, you have 2 automatic processes that occur. You have the fight, flight, freeze, fawn nervous system, is also known as the stress response or the survival mode. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then you have the rest and digest nervous system, the healing nervous system. So 4F and R&D. And you have 3 main pieces of neuroanatomy that are in charge of monitoring this cycle or this this balance. You have the vagus nerve, which is broken into two branches. You have a ventral, and then you have a dorsal vagus nerve. Ventral vagus nerve is the nervous system response that controls that rest and digest feeling, with energy. Anytime you felt connected, or you're playing, or you're happy, or joy, and think of like seeing a kid running on the beach, that is the ventral vagal nervous system response. And then the dorsal vagus nerve is the freeze mode. So even though I wrote 4F, the freeze mode is the most developed. And the freeze mode tells our body to stay where we are, hunker down, stay safe. You ever noticed how if you're in a conversation and things get heated, and then all of a sudden one person just shuts down? Or if you are needing to make a decision, it seems to be very important, you're like, I just need more information, you just can't quite act on it. That is the dorsal vagal nervous system response, the dorsal vagus nerve that tells your body, freeze, stay here. So then those are the main sensory input nerves to the brain. So that sends signals to the brain. And then within the brain, you have the amygdala, and then you have the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is the reptilian center of the brain. It is the emotional side of the brain. It is mainly where our negative emotions are formed. And it is the first part of the brain that the nervous system sends signals to. And this is, in essence, if you can wrap your mind around these two parts of neurology, the vagus nerve and the brain, you can understand autism. Children that express symptoms of autism have an overactive dorsal vagal nerve and an overactive amygdala. They shut down and they feel feelings very intensely. And then, so that kind of gives you an idea, and that's one far side of the spectrum, again, which is a common conversation piece right now, because as we're going to talk about in the next couple slides, the things that activate this 4F cycle, one of those things is synthetic chemicals. And this is why, again, the conversation that's keeping us wrapped in this cult conversation of us versus them is vaccines cause autism. Tylenol causes autism. It's vaccines are chemicals. Tylenol is chemicals. Chemicals increase the activation within the amygdala and the dorsal vagus nerve, causing those symptoms. Then on the other side of the brain, you have the prefrontal cortex. It's right at the forehead. This is our healing God center of our brain. This is, if you've ever been in flow mode where you're just firing, things are going easy, you're just in the zone, that is your prefrontal cortex. It's sequential planning, it is organization, it is peace, it is healing. And then those two main parts of neuroanatomy are what control and coordinate everything. And how the system is supposed to work is it's supposed to have activation of the 4F system and then immediate neutralization of it, meaning there's a stressful thing occurs, you do whatever you need to do, that neuroanatomy drops back down, no longer needed, and then the R&D, the research and development, the rest, digest, develop, heal system would then increase. So for example, in nature, think 200,000 years ago, we don't have weapons, we don't have tools, we just are simply walking around naked, and all of a sudden we see a tiger. And what we understand is tigers equal we die. So there's that don't die nervous system response. Then we run away from the tiger. We get away from the tiger. And then the brain, the R&D center of the brain says, oh, that worked well. We saw a tiger, we got away from the tiger, and we survived. So let's do that again. And that's where the reticular activating system comes in. It's the automation process of our nervous system. It's a system that is responsible if you've ever been driving home from work and you have all of a sudden whoa, shoot, I'm already home. You kind of zoned out the whole time. That's because your reticular activating system put you on autopilot. You've done that drive, it knows it. Sure, things are going to come up. It's going to handle it. You don't really need to focus on it. And this is where our nervous system outworks every other creature because it puts things back into automatic activating systems. So we don't have to think about it. It's just automatic. And so in a healthy environment, tiger, fight or flight response, get away from the tiger, good to go. Now your brain says, all right, we did our research. Tiger's not good. Now let's go ahead and develop. So we're gonna increase what kept us alive. So we're gonna increase oxygen transport for our lungs, make it more efficient to run away, so you get away from the tiger faster. We're gonna strengthen our muscles so that we can run faster. We're gonna strengthen the bottom of our feet so we can callus our feet, so we don't have to worry about stepping on sharp things. And then we're gonna get better at identifying tigers. That is how a balanced nervous system would respond. Fight or flight activation, 30 seconds to a minute of activation, and then the rest of the time R&D. But what does our current system look like? Our current system looks like this. Anxiety, exhaustion, guarded, anxiety, exhaustion, guarded. That is our cycle, isn't it? Just ask yourself a question right now. How much of your day do you have a resting level of anxiety? How much of your day are you just exhausted? How much of your day do you feel guarded? And if you say, actually pretty good, and then I'll ask the question, how often do you exercise? Because we can break down the 4F mode and the R&D mode even simpler, which is 4F is simply stay mode. And think about how this nervous system served our species for so long, because we would have a leader. The leader would keep his or her eyes open for danger. And if there was danger, he'd be like, you guys just stay here. And our nervous system would say, okay, hunker down. And then if it was all good, we would play. In fact, this play mode is not talked about at all. Even with how much money we spend as the United States with education, and how much faster and more efficiently people learn when you can convert something into a game, when you can activate the play mode. I mean, I was reading an article that said something around where you can do something. It takes 100 times to learn something with repetition. Unless you turn it into a game, that's 4. And so play mode is the ultimate demonstration of a healthy R&D system. Because right now, the cycle, as far as our nervous system is concerned, as far as our brain is concerned, as far as our vagus nerve is concerned, and our reticular activating system, is that there's 3 things that activate the 4F mode, that stay mode. And it is synthetic environment. Anything synthetic activates the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And to give you an idea why that is because our nervous system is, Dr. Bruce Lipton says, our nervous system is continually and constantly perceiving and adapting to our environment. So our environment as a species for hundreds of thousands of years was nature. This is why nature is quote unquote good for you. This is why going on hikes, quote unquote, good for you. It's why going on camping, quote unquote, good for you. It's good for you because that is what is normal for our nervous system. Anytime we subject our nervous system to something that is abnormal, now there's a heightened awareness. There is a need to be on guard. There's a need to have the survival modes kicked up a little bit. So look around your environment right now. Right now I have a fake light, a fake computer, a fake desk. I have a fake microphone, and I'm sitting inside a fake building. How much of my world right now is synthetic? So then you can start to understand how much work that vagus nerve is doing to perceive our environment. And this is not just in humans, it's in all creatures. If you take an animal out of the wild and put them in a zoo, even if that zoo looks supernatural, within 6 months, those animals develop mental health issues, and within years, they develop chronic health issues. It's because of that activation within the 4F mode, that fight or flight, freeze, fawn mode, synthetic environment. Exposing someone to synthetic chemicals, injecting someone with the synthetic chemicals, has the exact same response. Activates the stay mode, trains the brain to be on guard in survival mode. And then the second thing is inactivity. Because again, our species would be active nonstop. We'd be looking for food. We would be moving. Because if we stayed still for any period of time, then we would be prey. If you heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking, it's because sitting activates the 4F mode. It puts us on guard. And you cannot be in stay mode and play mode at the same time. You can't be in fight or flight mode and healing mode at the same time. It's only one or the other. And this is with the inactivity part, it is so definitive now, where they've been able to calculate hours sitting for increase of risk of death and disease across the board. And that's why. And this is, again, roots back to my frustration during the beginning of the pandemic, when it's like, we have this virus that healthy people don't get sick from, don't even know they have. Isn't that great? We're going to sit everyone inside where all they have to do is interact with technology. Right there, they started to wire everyone's nervous system and their brains to stay in that guarded state. And so then the reticular activating system says, it's automating all of this. It says, well, clearly there's danger all around. We can't ever find it, so we need to keep looking. And clearly the leaders don't think it's safe, so we're going to go ahead and just hunker down here. And now we're going to start to develop conservation mode, which is putting on inflammation, putting on fat. And that, if you look around now, look around in the richest country in the world, does this health picture start to make sense? You can see now it's not really about the one thing. It's not really about the vaccine. It's about the culture that's associated with the vaccine and the training of the nervous system. Because as Taylor Swift says it, player's going to play, and haters going to hate. Can't be in both. And now you can also see how this neuroanatomy gears these members of this culture to see everyone as a threat and demand that we assure them that we're not. Does everything start to make sense now? Can you start to see the trends across the board? Can you start to see how now, as soon as we engage in these conversations, there is only one response, is, as far as the nervous system's concerned, you're either like us or you're not. There is no satisfying them, because there is no satisfying the neuroanatomy that has been trained to see differences, not similarities. So where are you at? Where are you at in this? You in play mode or are you in stay mode? What's your level of exhaustion? What's your level of anxiety? What's your level of feeling guarded? How often do you play? Because cults rule the stay nervous system. And here's what I've heard so many people who choose not to poison their kids. I'm not even going to say anti-vaxxers anymore. People who choose not to poison their kids in one form or another. And by the way, does this mean you have to be full on, I don't poison my kids at all? No. But you can be a person that chooses not to in specific areas of life. And this is a common thing that I have been guilty of, and that I hear other people that choose not to poison their kids have been guilty of, which is this statement of like, what are the people just stupid? If you remember back to the beginning of the pandemic, it was like, it's only gonna be 2 weeks, and all the people were like, yeah, it's only gonna be 2 weeks. And we're like, there's a group of us that was very small. Well, maybe it was large. I don't actually know. We were led to believe that we were by ourselves. At least I was. That other people did not see things the way I saw things. And I would tell people, like, this is going to be more than 2 weeks. There's no way this is 2 weeks. And then it's going to be 2 months, and then it's going to be 2 years, and then it's going to be vaccine passports. And it seemed to be this sequential event that was playing out. And the people that were part of this culture, were the vaccine culture, were like, no, it's going to be 2 weeks. And then after the 2 weeks, it's like they just forgot that was their their uh, their stance. And so then our response as people not part of that culture is to say, well, like, what are you, stupid? And and I hate to say people are stupid because it really comes down to neuroanatomy. And when someone has a dominant 4F system, a stay mode, there is a predictable strengthening and weakening of neuroanatomy that occurs. So the first weakening that occurs is the temporal lobes. This is, I end up purchasing an EEG machine. I mean, again, you got to take me back. Okay, so I'm a chiropractor and I'm in full defense mode. And I want to be able to explain why people are losing their minds, why our friends are getting divorced, why our friends are falling into addiction, why everyone's marriages are falling apart. Like I really wanted to understand because didn't. I mean, I was a chiropractor. I pop people's necks and backs, and they feel better, and they had more energy, and then they could do more. That's what I was before the pandemic. And then when the government's saying you need to explain yourself, I had to learn about what was going on. I was highly motivated. And so I ended up getting the EEG machine, which measures the electrical centers of the brain. And so you can measure people's brains and then see, okay, this part of the brain is really active. This part of the brain is not active. And so, and this should not be a surprise. If you lift, dumbbell over and over and for your bicep, what happens to your bicep? It gets stronger. If you don't, what happens to your bicep? It gets weaker. It's basic supply and demand as far as our neuroanatomy is concerned. So when a 4F system is a stay mode nervous system response is automatized, the parts of the brain that are needed in a R&D or play mode are weakened because they're not used. So the temporal lobes, which control hearing and auditory comprehension. Have you been in an argument and someone's like, just they don't seem to be hearing you, and you're saying the same thing and they're saying the same thing back? It's because when we're in stay mode or 4F mode, we have a decrease in processing auditory information, notably. And then, have you ever been in an argument with somebody, or in this case of our dear friends that thought it was going to be 2 weeks to stop the spread or slow the spread, or whatever it was, flatten the curve, and they was like just didn't remember what's literally because the hippocampus, which is our memory center, becomes downregulated, and so memory is no longer a thing. In fact, it's almost to the equivalent of being blacked out drunk, because if you've ever, I'm not going to ask anybody to say if this was them or not, but if you've ever drank so much alcohol that you don't remember what you did the night before, and I've been there. I caught a peacock one time in Mexico. Okay, it's all-inclusive resort, and I would like to say I didn't know what I was doing, but it's actually not true. I knew what I was doing. I was getting that peacock. I just didn't form new memories because alcohol inhibits the hippocampus. So anyone that says, I didn't know what I was doing, yeah, they did. They did know, but they did not store it as memory. And so in essence, people that are stuck in the stay mode are basically blacked out drunk all the time. And then we have a upregulation or a strengthening of the amygdala, which we've already talked about, which heightens emotional experience and increases the internal negative dialogue. If you've ever been in a situation where someone's rubbed you the wrong way and then you ask yourself the question in your mind, why did they do that? And then you come up with some narrative. That is your amygdala. Your amygdala is running the story because it's finding the answer rather than through avoidance rather than actually getting the answer. And our amygdala comes up with all the answers. And in essence, anytime you have this negative dialogue going on, or I have this negative dialogue, the answer is the other person is bad. And that is the amygdala. It's why are they bad? Because they're different than us. They can't be trusted. Why are people that don't want to poison their kids bad? Because we're different than them and we can't be trusted. And then we have the substantia nigra, which is the dopamine center of the brain. And because of being reliant on the 4F mode, that is stress hormones. That is cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline. That is what we're running off of as far as fuel is concerned. You know this. Like, you see drama and it's like, ooh, yeah, give it to me. But it's a dirty energy. It's very corrosive. It's very toxic. It takes a lot of time to detox off of it, which is why the system's really only designed for 30 minutes of interaction at a time. The substantia nigra is what produces dopamine, but it becomes inhibited because we don't use it. And how do we use it? We use it by pursuing goals. We use it by exercise. We use it by creating things. We use it by learning new skill sets. And 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 it becomes weakened through drugs, through alcohol, through technology. In essence, it's weakened by all the things that strengthen the 4F system. And now can you start to see how, like, our current culture makes sense? It's not that kids are quote unquote lazy. It's because they have neuroanatomy that makes it impossible for them not to be. Because laziness is simply someone who wants to stay the same. Which then leads us to the answer. So why do so many people stay in this vaccine culture? And we already hit it. And again, I'm not speaking to anybody that is on the fence right now, because all those people will just want to argue with me, and I will tell them how great they are and how many great points they have, and I think they're very smart. I'm just a big dummy. You gotta remember that. I just didn't watch the news. I was too stupid to know that I was supposed to be afraid. I was too stupid to know that I was supposed to just do what I was told. Because that's the only way to converse with people that are in this cult. Because what they are is they are overdeveloped. They're very strong. They're very smart in part of their brain. And they're very weak in another part of the brain. And they stay there for three main reasons. So I believe that every one of us has this whisper to us. And so I think that right now there's a lot of people that they're having the whisper of, like, this doesn't seem right. I don't really want to do this to my kids. It doesn't really make sense. I don't really want to do this to myself anymore. But they're afraid because of sickness. So they say, okay, well, I don't want to do it. But then everyone around them starts to get sick. And they're like, oh, shoot, I'm scared. I'm going to go back. Or their schedule. I just don't have time to get sick. I don't have time to have my kid have symptoms. I don't have time myself. I don't have time. Same reason why no one works out. They don't have time. And then there's the social aspect of it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was heartbreaking to lose all my friends. But then I didn't really lose my friends, did I? It takes me back to when I was growing up. I grew up very poor, and my parents, they tried their best, but we lived in a mobile home, and they had 4 boys, and ended up getting divorced, and they both struggled with drug addiction. My parents did, and we were very poor, and then I was a passenger in a rollover car accident, and then ended up, my friend driving, lost control at 55 miles an hour, went through I rolled the car several times. I went through the side window, hit my face in the ground. I walked with a noticeable limp and had muscle spasms, headaches, and severe pain. And then I would lay in bed night after night, just asking myself the questions: is this the way the rest of my life is going to be? Like, is that life even worth living? And the answer seemed to be no. And eventually, I went from taking pain pills, muscle relaxers that were prescribed to my doctor, to smoking large amounts of weed. And that was really, it wasn't ever a fun thing or a cool thing. It was just like, I'm borderline suicidal every day, and this is just how I'm getting through my life. And then, after a year of this, of no hope, someone was like, why don't you go to a chiropractor? And I was like, why would I? They're not real doctors. Why would I go? And then and I went, and then I started to get better, and I started to heal, and then I started to get excited because all of a sudden I did have hope, and I didn't have to walk with a limp, and I didn't have to have a partially paralyzed face or headaches or muscle spasms, but just to be able to sleep was a miracle. And then I'm telling all my friends who I smoked weed with this great thing. And I'm telling them, like, I'm not going to smoke weed anymore. I don't really want to do this anymore. And all of a sudden, I went from having a lot of friends to not having any friends. I was no longer part of that culture of drug use. So in essence, the social aspect of it was all these friends that I had within this community that I'd done a lot of good things with. It was all fake. It was no more real than the friends that I had when I smoked weed. They were really happy for me when I was doing something that was harming myself. But the moment that I held myself to a different standard, I realized that that's not what they wanted. They wanted me to stay the same. But this is why. That idea of losing that social support is what keeps people staying in the vaccine culture. And then this is what happens. And this is what you're called when you walk away from the cult. You're called anti-vax. You're called stupid, anti-science, delusional, anti-mask, selfish, conspiracy theorist. You're a bad parent. I had hundreds of these interactions when I decided not to wear masks in Washington State during the pandemic. I actually never changed. I just stayed the same. But all of a sudden, I became all of these things because the cult demanded its followers to do what they said, and I no longer wanted to do that. So to them, I became all these things. And I became defensive to them, to the point where my blood pressure got out of control. My blood vessels, my eyeballs were rupturing from the stress of arguing with people. And even after all of that, I still found myself in the same cycle of defending. I'm not a bad parent. Look how healthy my kids are. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Look how right I was. I'm not stupid. Look at the science. I'm not delusional. Look around. I'm not selfish. I'm doing this to set an example for you. I still defended myself. And the reason was I was still getting sucked back into the cult, because that cult is based on that 4F mode of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. If you're fighting them, you're part of them. If you're fawning to them, you're part of them. If you're freezing, you're part of them. If you're trying to run away, you're flighting away from them. You are part of the 4F cult. And then I came to realize something. So when you walk away from the vaccine cult, you're going to be called all these things. But there's another name for you. Because you are known, and a tree is known by the fruit it produces. So for example, if you see a tree with apples on it, what kind of tree is that? If you see a tree with peaches, I can't even say it. What kind of tree is that? If you see a plum on a tree, what kind of tree is that? They are what they are. They are by their fruit. So what you are, if you are watching this workshop, you're a person who calls out snakes, because a snake is historically a thing that is poisonous, and you call them out. And I've been joined all these groups to try to empower the members with this information, and you guys are, enthusiastic about calling out these snakes. I was right with you too. I've called them out, and you have a belief system that you can heal yourself, and you do it in an attempt to heal others, or serve others, I should say. So, you've already made up your mind, right? You've made up your mind of what you believe in and what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And so then you put this information out to serve other people, to show other people the light. And I don't know if you knew this, but when you neurologically rewire yourself to be out of the 4F mode, out of that stay mode, into a healthy mode, you actually become healing to others. And so what you are is, if you look on the bottom of the screen right here, I don't think I have a pointer. There's a symbol there. It's a symbol. I think it's in Rome. And what it is it's two Greek letters. It looks like a P and then an X. So what those are is the two Greek letters. The 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 X is the what's called the chi, and then the P is what's known as the rho. So CHI, and then the P is RHO. So what you are is kairos. And what the Cairo symbol was the original symbol for Christ. You may not consider yourself a Christian, but if you are doing all these things, you are a symbol of Christ. So you are not all the anti things. What you are, whether you know it or not, is you are a Cairo. You are demonstrating the work of Christ right now on earth. And so really, my goal, I'll go back, is to give you now the tools. If you got one of these down, calling out snakes, you know some natural remedies, serving others, healing others. My goal right now is to help rewire your nervous system to balance out that equation. And do you know how long it takes to rewire the nervous system to start to get neurological changes? It takes 2 weeks. And our goal is to rewire stay mode to play mode so that you have the energy from stay mode and then you can immediately convert it into play mode. And so there comes down to 3 areas of neurological rewiring that occurs. Number 1, get your mind right. Number 2, get your spine right. And number 3, get your time right. And I just said them 1, 2, 3, but actually all of them doesn't matter which order you started in, because our thoughts then continue the activation of the autonomic nervous system. And we can run a quick experiment right now, or a quick exercise, if I can show you how easy this is. So right now, think about your favorite food. Is it dessert? Is it dinner? What is it? So when you think about it, so for me it's Moose Creek ice cream. It's this vanilla chocolate ice cream, has these caramel swirls in it, and like the chocolate fudge that's also like a little bit hardened, and then little like peanut butter chocolate cups. So like think about like taking a scoop of this ice cream and holding it up, looking at it, look at the like imagine looking at the pint of ice cream and then taking a scoop of it and then bringing that spoon up to your mouth, and like the peanut butter cup is right there, and what's happening right now within your mouth? It's starting to salivate, and you can do this with any food you have. Like you just activated the R&D system. You just activated the play mode within your nervous system. You just played a little game with me. So it's a matter of balancing the equation by getting our mind right, continually retraining it for that play mode. And then moving the spine then also directly activates the brain. In fact, a Japanese scientist shows that 90% of stimulation in the brain comes from movement of the spine. That's why running is good for you. That's why yoga is good for you. That's why getting chiropractic care is good for you. It's moving the spine in order to activate the brain. And then getting your time right. And I get it. It's addictive to want to fight with people. And if you looked at your time, how much of your time is spent in the 4F mode versus the R&D mode? Because again, 4F mode should only be about 30 seconds of activation, and the rest is R&D play mode. And what we noticed is with this combination, within 2 weeks, you start to get momentum, start to get a snowball effect that occurs. And then they start to feed on themselves. And yes, did we all get bamboozled into the opposite of this during the pandemic? Yes, we did. 2 weeks. Because they knew it's only going to take 2 weeks to start to retrain the nervous system, to imbalance the equation. But it can take 2 weeks to start to get balance. So then the question that I've been asked by my lawyer, by my friends, by so many people, and this is why I decided that I wasn't going to do the thing that I knew I was going to absolutely get crucified during the pandemic. This is why I have been threatened with fines, jail time. This is why, at the end of the day, I ended up closing my clinic and walking away from it. I didn't sell my $1 million business. I closed it and walked away. This right here, this picture. This is my wife, Chelsea. This is my daughter, Penny. This is my son, Beckett and Callan. And when the beginning of the pandemic occurred, before the mandates, I told my wife, there is no way I am going to live somewhere that is the equivalent to Islamic extremist, where they tell you to cover your face and you do. And she said to me, Devin, you better figure it out then, because that is going to be everywhere. There is nowhere to avoid this. And so then I did not take that serious, but my wife has done a good job at holding me to a standard and then forcing me to maintain that standard. And then when everything did occur, I looked at my daughter, who's beautiful, smart, kind, and I had to be honest with myself. Is it okay, or am I ever going to feel okay teaching her that if someone has enough power and if they use enough force, they can make you do whatever they want? And I decided that moment that didn't matter what the threats were, what the consequence was going to be. My daughter and what I would teach her was the most important thing. That it was never going to be okay for anyone to tell her what she can or can't do with her body if she did not believe in it. And then my sons, because now we live in a world, mic down, sorry about that. We live in a world now that I found out that my good friend was abusing his wife, and he was doing it and based on religious belief systems that husbands are supposed to be the leader of the house, and that their wives are supposed to be submissive to them. And in essence, that mindset is simply a 4F mindset of a weak neurology seeking for control, which is no different than what the government did. It's no different than what the medical profession does. Of, I know what's right for you, and I'm going to make you do it. And I was never going to teach my two sons that idea was ever okay. That culture of telling someone what they need to do is ever okay if they did not believe in it. So this is my why. This is why I've done what I've done. And then this is what I have produced over the last 5 years as I've gone through these battles. Dr. Tapper and I don't know if you're familiar with him. Dr. Tapper is a chiropractor in Nebraska. He's a good friend of mine, and he was labeled as one of the disinformation dozen during the pandemic because he openly stood up and called out the snakes. And so we hosted a continuing education class in the Dominican Republic, and we recorded it. So it's a online certification that we do for vaccine research. And he is an expert on this research because he's been involved in this conversation for many years now. So we produce this tool for people to have the certainty within their knowledge base, not for arguing with other people, but for being well educated. And then I created this second, which is a book I wrote with audiobook and the online workshop sheets, which is Get Paid and Get Laid. The secret to getting lucky that medical doctors, churches, and schools did not teach you. And in essence, this is the questions and the exercises that I went through to actively retrain my own nervous system in order to get balance from that 4F mode back into play mode, because there is a lot in our day-to-day activities that then trap us back into the stay mode. And so this is a tool that is simply a go-to guide where people can work through it over and over in order to then, 2 weeks at a time, rewire the nervous system for play mode and stay mode balance. And then fully compliant. So this is when I was under investigation and then was found to be fully compliant. And I ended up putting a class together for other chiropractors, because a lot of chiropractors got crucified during the pandemic, because rather than saying, I'm a doctor, my job is to keep my patients healthy, they instead were like, I ain't doing this, forget that. And for me, I'm a believer in following the law, and the law is definitive in the United States, and so this is the law as it relates to how illegal the mandates were, and it's a full lecture on this, and how your rights were impacted and how your health was impacted. Because in essence, if you have ever been to a doctor's office and you've gone in and gotten services, you're required to be provided by what's called an informed consent. And if you did not get this informed consent, therefore, then everything that could go wrong and did go wrong with that medical procedure, then the doctors are liable for. So they're pretty serious about doing these informed consents, and actually we're required to as healthcare providers. And I want to ask a question. Did you get an informed consent where you were told that you had to wear a medical apparatus over your face all day from leaving your home to getting back to your home? Were you ever informed on the negative health consequences of that? Because if you were not, then the government, and specifically the Department of Health, did not follow the law. And this course breaks down the things that were the negative effects of the nervous system for everyone who's impacted by them. It might be a thing that you thought was coincidental. I just thought, gosh, I'm just getting old. That's why I have anxiety all the time now. And with this seminar, I bring the very important question up: is if the government then, and the Department of Health, did not have you fill out a informed consent, then really they are operating with a religious authority of dictating belief systems to people that maybe do not share those belief systems, and while doing so, getting funding from tax dollars, which is again also illegal. So put together this for educating people and empowering people with the law. And then the last part is the Fog to Fire, which is a 300-page ebook and audiobook that I put together. Our research and our healing and training center in the jungles of the Dominican Republic. We took all of our money and we bought 47 acres and moved there for a year, where I studied neuroanatomy and I studied scripture in order to develop tools and processes to help people get even. And I don't say that in a revenge way, like balance their nervous system, rewire the nervous system in order to have peace, in order to walk away from a cult that they don't want to be part of anymore, a culture they don't want to belong to anymore, and a culture they never asked to be part of. And if you would like all these tools, so anyone that sits through this now is getting to the point where this is on the screen. I'm calling it the player's package, because you're either in play mode and you're optimizing your nervous system to heal, to reset, to develop, or you're in hate mode, which is defense, guard, anxiety, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And so if you'd like this total package, all these, Dr. Tapper has given me the right to, in essence, give away this stuff. I mean, these are thousands of dollars in courses that we have sold. And we both are in agreement that right now people need more tools. And so if you would like these tools, for a $95 donation, you get full access to them, lifetime access. And then support the work that we do in continuing to help remind people of who they are. Because again, you are not an anti-vaxxer. You are not an anti-masker. You are not delusional. You're not a conspiracy theorist. You're not stupid. You're not a bad parent. You are the only people demonstrating the example of Christ in this world right now. And your kids are watching you, and your kids are mirroring your example. So I may have gotten blocked on Facebook. I've gotten some messages asking if this got shut down. So I wanted to open it up for questions, but I don't know if I actually see questions on the screen. So if you have any questions, comment below, and I'll continue to watch on this. And then if for whatever reason you can't access this barcode, then send me a message and I'll get it sent to you. Thank you for your most valuable resource, which is your time, and for joining us. I did go a little bit over an hour, and I apologize for that. And I'm here to serve. So whatever questions you have, send me a message or comment below.